Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max and Trev with BuzzTox here with our initial thoughts on Westworld Season 2, Episode 4. What's going on, Trev?
Not too much. What a heavy, thick episode.
This was the densest episode of Westworld so far this season. They gave us a ton of information, and they almost proved a lot of theories that we were talking about.
Didn't this feel like it could have been a finale?
It did.
It had it was longer, okay, but it was like, they've revealed so much.
It uncovered a lot. First main point I want to talk about is the whole James Delos reincarnation immortality angle.
Yes.
So we knew early on, we were talking about how immortality seems like the next step. And it was interesting watching William interact with James throughout all that time.
Yeah.
So William's goal was, I would say he wanted to get him off script.
Yeah, he was trying. At least in the early days, he was trying his hardest.
Yeah, so they were trying, it's like this weird science where they're combining, it's literally a complete mind transfer.
Yes.
But what's interesting with this arc is at the end, William says that, not everyone is meant to live forever. Like, there's value in death. And we see James almost fall apart because he found out that his wife died, his kids died. And that is almost in itself like suffering leads to consciousness.
Yes.
And when we see him, when Bernard and Elsie find him, he's operating almost off code. He's a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, man. That's what's like pure. I thought it was a Blade Runner. It was so Blade Runner scene, like original Blade Runner. And it seemed like the bad guy from Blade Runner. Like he's just this crazy, almost like, what would you call it? Like schizophrenic robot. It was really cool seeing how they did that.
But how do you think they're going to play off this immortality angle later in this season, based on what we've learned in this episode?
Oh, Bernard, like, I feel like they really gave us a lot. For a show that, like, slow drips information and tidbits and it drops hints, this was like, that's why it felt like a finale to me.
Yeah.
They could have ended this. Like, even the last scene, they're like, what? Like, it was a finale laid out show that it just blew my mind, like how it rolled out.
The one thing that I find interesting with the pursuit of consciousness is that we saw this with Dolores last season, where you get your timelines mixed up. The more suffering, the more you get pushed into the maze. We saw Dolores achieve consciousness where she actually communicated with herself. So Delos as a company has pretty much created beings, like functional, real humans that have true consciousness. But it's funny how they're stumped over science by integrating somebody's existing consciousness into a host.
They were too science. They were trying to get it down to a science when it's more philosophical, and that's what we're seeing the hosts like Dolores figure out. It's the maze. Like, you have to suffer, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and you have to come down this path or go through this path to get to your center, and that's what this whole thing is. So them trying over and over again, however many times, like 150 times, trying to get this guy to be who he was supposed to be, still never worked, and they didn't realize what the magic sauce was. And that's what sort of Ford laid out.
And I think we're going to find out that magic sauce at the end of this season. I think it'll run its course. I think, like, we think each character has its own unique arc. It seems like with Maeve and Bernard, they're very centered on achieving their own maze.
Yes.
Where they're trying to find their own voice. Dolores is that Judas steer who's trying to lead people to suffer so they can become conscious. Bernard is like, he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He's trying to put his pieces together until he finds his own inner voice.
That's what I want to touch on with you, though. Do you think, like I said about, we kind of had this conversation after the fact because I had missed the last 2 weeks, but Dolores is going all out. She's going like, she's killing all the people that she can. She seems like extra villainy because I think they're painting this picture for us to lead us down an impression of her. But do you think, like, once Bernard gets to that situation, that he's going to be the same? Like, do you think they'll have the same philosophy of, like, I got to kill everybody so that they're on the same team? Or do you think that there's different flavors of acceptance of this consciousness?
I think he'll have his own thoughts and, like, maybe a different opinion, but Dolores is, the way she knows is if you lead people to suffer, to the slaughter, then you'll get people who are conscious. And right now I feel like she's so isolated, which we saw last episode. Yeah. She feels so alone and abandoned, whereas Bernard is kind of flopping between human and host because he was coded to be a human, like, to feel like a human. So I think that's going to be his struggle. But that's where I think we go on about Bernarnold.
Yes, Bernarnold.
Where that's got to be the thorough plot line, where I feel like Bernard is going to be the first true, or William. I think we're going to see multiple characters jump into a new body.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so significant, where I need to look at what William said to James, where death is almost a necessity. But I think the door that William is after, that Ford gave him, is a door to Dolores. It's a new body where he's going to have a successful transfer of consciousness into a new body. And that would be almost the wrapping up of this mysterious science that they don't understand, being able to transfer a human into an existing host body.
Yes.
Whereas Bernard, his body is traumatic, like he's breaking down. And I feel like that guest data that they have, I'm sure they have DNA and data that they could use for Bernard to reprint himself with some Arnold DNA. That's why we're seeing flashbacks of not only himself, but of Arnold also.
Yes. And that's like the telltale trope of a host becoming conscious, is them literally reliving the memories that they have.
But one thing I did love was we were spending that time with James and William, but we also got a lot of William as, you know, that man in black figure in Westworld.
Yeah.
We see him go to Lawrence's home, but we see that there's a lot more to the man in black now, that there seems to be stakes. You'd think that he thinks of Lawrence not really as a friend, but he's a companion that he always goes to over the years. A big thing with Lawrence that we learned is that he's also on that reveries path where he told William, you told me you had a daughter.
Yeah, he broke through a little bit.
And that was what William told him in a previous life, or a previous adventure. So he's on that path. And that was the big decision William made, was to save Lawrence and his wife because of his own issues in life. Where we saw the bathtub, that was his wife killing herself.
Safe to say it was his wife.
Yeah. So we may get more footage on that, seeing that dramatic turn that William went through when he saw his wife dead in the bathtub. But I think it goes to show that he's not bad. He's not a bad guy.
No.
He did a good deed to save, I guess his friend Lawrence.
Yeah. And he seemed noble in the pursuit of helping his father-in-law at the beginning. He really did seem like he was trying to help him. Or get this science to be perfect so that he could have his father-in-law. It seemed the second time in that he was a little bit corrupted. There's things changing, right?
Yeah, and William says how dissatisfied he is with the judgment that he got, because he saw Westworld as a fake park. You kill somebody and they're back the next day. There were no stakes, and he wants something true. And I feel like now, on his adventure to West and to find the door that Ford gave him, he's realizing that the stakes are becoming more real. When Lawrence dies, he's probably not coming back. And he's on that reveries role where he's becoming more than just, a coded host. And I think that's interesting, because that's the path of the door. As he's getting deeper and deeper into this game, we're finding that he's playing more of himself rather than a character, the villain that he wanted to play. So I think that's interesting. And I'm going to be really interested to see him and Dolores come together, if that's possible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And also, he saw his daughter, so I wonder how she's going to play a role now going forward.
Well, we got to talk about that. A lot of people didn't even think that was his daughter. So we watched this separately. I was on vacation at the time, so I watched it sort of after it had come out. And when I saw it, I was like, oh man, this is his daughter. She's so badass. And I was thinking, she had to be his daughter because of how, professional she was at the park. Who else would have access to the park and be that badass? Knowing how to shoot with the tiger and all that stuff. And I didn't even catch the name thing, because I know you see her early in the episode with Dolores, right? At the piano. And I didn't even realize that she swapped out her name, because I wasn't really listening. But man, I was that was so gratifying to get it in the next episode.
Well, it seems like they're on a similar path now, because Grace was looking at that multi-hexagonal shape, which represents the project for conscious transfer to immortality.
Yes,
I think. And that's where Williams. Yeah, and that's where William says he's going. He's going to his biggest mistake, and I think that was the pursuit of immortality. And that's where everyone's going, is they're pursuing that space. So I'm going to be really interested to see how this thing closes. Because I think his daughter is a great... I thought his daughter would be involved in this season because it provides stakes for him. Like, that's his only tether to reality.
Yeah, he had nothing else literally to live because it didn't seem like she wanted anything to do with him. His wife's dead. Everyone hates him because of what he's become in the park. And now she's there. And it's Jurassic Park. Like, the dinosaurs are loose. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because I don't know what are her motivations, right? What is she looking for? I don't think she's looking. I think she's looking for the diametrically opposite thing as what he's looking for.
Yeah.
Like maybe she was looking for information on her grandfather, right?
It's interesting because
that's what throws me for a loop is this episode because, like I said, it's like a finale. That they could have almost saved that finale because that's what I thought they were looking for was this place where there was testing and there was going to be hundreds of different like frozen shells of real live people from the world like being waited to be like tested on. And as soon as I saw this cell, I thought they weren't going to show anymore, but they literally show it into the end and then they burn him. Like I thought they were actually going to use him as a character further down the road. Like he would have escaped. Because he would have been a real cool bad guy to be out there. Because he would have such hate for William, right? But that's what I mean. Like, so what else then is the weapon? Because that's what I thought this weapon would be.
Right.
Right? Like this seedy underground project of Westworld that was looking into like swapping out consciousness with real world people, right? And it seems innocent if he was trying to do it for his father-in-law, but I would see like dark corporation creep in and say like, oh, we can swap out people that are in power and stuff like that.
I think there's a little more to it outside of the James Delos situation.
Yeah, because I don't think he's heading there now. That's what I'm trying to say. Like he's not heading to where James was.
Yeah, no.
That's what I mean. So it's something I have to rethink about altogether. Because I thought he was heading to the consciousness facility.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a small... With James, we got a small glimpse, I think, at the bigger picture.
At the bigger program, yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. But there are a couple things this season that I think we're going to see. And that's, Bernard finding himself potentially becoming a Bernarnold.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing with William is that he was alive when he was with Dolores in the park 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. So Ford's storyline, we're already seeing it's William's finding himself again.
Yeah, he's
going on that journey to
he's
find himself.
In human mode.
Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't slip anything past Ford. Like, even his daughter winding up there, it wouldn't surprise me if Ford somehow was aware or, like, tried to station, like, the natives, for example. They were programmed to gather people and to keep them safe. And maybe he thought, with the tiger, and he could lead William's daughter back to him because he's on a journey of self-discovery that Ford gave to him.
Yeah, it seems so far-fetched, but I get what you mean. Well, like it was engineered for them to meet up somehow.
Yeah,
because like I said, I think they're searching for the opposite thing, but their paths must cross because they will end up sort of circling around one another's quests.
Yeah, and that's what I realized with Bernard's storyline this episode is that Ford's hand is still in this. Like, he developed Journey into Night, which is a storyline, and he still has a very tight hand on everything. He had Clementine knock Bernard out and drag him to that situation.
So you would go through the revelry.
Yeah, and he relied on Bernard hopefully to find himself and look back upon his memories and find the facility. And now he's one step closer now to discovering those answers.
We didn't even give it any enthusiasm, but fucking Elsie's alive.
Elsie? Yeah.
That's crazy.
So they're on a journey now. What are they doing now?
Okay, so that's what he said. He said Ford had sent him there to get, I guess, this mind marble thing for someone else. My prediction is it's for himself, right? It seems pretty obvious, right?
Right.
Unless he's already got one.
So what is that mind marble?
I don't know. It seems like it's the different OS that they mention. It's the consciousness into their programming. Like it's the USB adapter to brain that you need.
Yeah, because what we learned with Bernard is that we see that he's in the operations. He's working on that aspect, which I believe that's the other code that he found. It's not even, he didn't even call it code. It's a weird mixture of human and host.
Yes.
And Bernard was there because he's under Ford's control.
Yeah.
So Ford was overseeing that, and he knew where that was headed. And we see, for example, like their brain capsules. The ones that we saw were red, which hints at those are the actual human transport brains. So it's a whole different facility, and that facility I think is specifically designed for that. And that shows that it's a much bigger picture than James Delos. Like, this was a big thing that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that little marble or whatever, I think that could be maybe Ford left behind Arnold.
Yeah.
And that could be, we'd learn about the weird mixture between human and host, where Dolores was created and found her own self. And I think if you're human, the transfer only works if you have a host that develops his own self and you mix it somehow.
Yes.
Or something like that. So I think Bernard is going to become that Bernardold, and that was a part of Ford's wish for him.
Well, that's what I feel like. That's the obvious thing. I feel like it's so glaring that it's that it's Arnold's consciousness, right? But it could be someone else, because at the same time we're seeing Bernard turn conscious on his own. Like, he might not need this marble, and maybe that's what it's about too.
Yeah.
It's very cool. I wish they would have played with James Delos a little bit more, though, because he's such a cool thing. Like, he's just this isolated AI that's just been rotting in the basement of this pitch black basement. Yeah. But cool.
But the key with that is he wasn't really working on script.
No.
So it's like, in a sense, they succeeded, except he was a fucking psychopath.
That's what I mean. He would have been such a crazy bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, just out to kill William. Like, so bad.
I think that's really interesting. The whole concept of immortality is going to play a huge role going forward in the show.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. That's our initial reaction and impression of this episode. Please let us know what you think in the comment section down below, and we'll be am I having like a reverie breakdown? And we'll be back with more Westworld videos later. See you guys.